Hello everybody, my name is Josh. I wanted to show you quick and easy ways you can start your seeds inside. And before I did that, I thought it'd be helpful to kind of show you where we're going. And this is what I just took out of the garden. This 1st of March, and it has been snowing, and we have a full set of kale, Swiss chard, lettuces, to spinach, to mustard greens, and they were all started inside. And I'm going to show you what I've gone through, which has been a lot of incorrect steps that I have kind of organized and made a lot better over each time I've done this. So I'm going to show you quick and easy ways to start your seeds inside. So the next step to think about as you think through the long-term goal, before you start thinking about what you need to start as seeds, it's helpful to think about where you're going to go. So you think about your destination and plan for the destination so that we can think backwards from there. So to do that, what I like to do, my preference is to visualize my end goal, and I'll explain this here in just a second. Visualize the end goal and then work backwards. So what we have here, like raised bed 1, we have a visualization of a 10 by 4 bed broken up into squares, and then each plant is designated and identified by a letter. And then over here on the left, the legend, all the way down, is all of these plants all the way down are going to be the different plants that I'm going to be preparing. And so we'll have plant spacing. The yellow column is a really important one because we can begin to multiply out however many we're planning to figure out how many we need to start inside. We have squares planted, so we'll then figure out once we know plant spacing, the number of squares we're going to plant, that'll tell us how many seeds we need to start for that particular item. And I typically do start more seeds than needed just because some of them will not pan out. So I'll have all of my raised beds, and this is a tall bed that has almost 40 rows in it that will allow me to facilitate this planting process. So I get it figured out on paper first as step 1. And then since I know the plant spacing, I can then take step 2, which is to figure out what I do in the greenhouse. All right, so I have a bunch of different mini greenhouses, and then I will plan out all of my plants, and I'll put any letters I have associated with the plant, so I have a quick key and a legend. And the reason I do this is because in the years past, I wouldn't plant it at this level. I would plant the greenhouses, I would get everything all set, but then I would lose track of which plant was which. So this allows me to then cut out each of these little squares and then tape them onto the greenhouse starter set right here. So it makes it just a one-to-one correlation, makes it a lot easier. So in the next step, what I'll do is once you have your planting done, then we'll be able to move forward and work with our mini greenhouse. And the mini greenhouse is just simply a tub that has water on the bottom. It has the 72 cells as an insert, and then there's the piece of plastic that goes on the top, which is going to be for generating that greenhouse effect. And so in the next step, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get some dirt in here, get some seeds in, get some water in, and then we'll be all set. So one of the first things you want to do so that it's ready is go ahead and get some water boiling. The idea is you want to kill everything that's chlorine and it's going to hurt the little baby seeds and seedlings. And what I'll do is this serves 2 purposes. The hot water is going to give us a little bit of temperature so that it'll help germinate the seeds, but we need to mix it then. If it's too hot, we need to mix it down with like reverse osmosis or distilled water that's at room temperature so that we get things about 80 to 85 degrees to start with, which will just kind of help the germination process. Okay, next step, we need to get our seed starting mix. We need to get this prepared so that way we're ready to go. And ideally, I typically try to only go stuff with organic, go the organic route. But in this instance, Miracle Grow was what Home Depot had available, so I just kind of had to roll with it. There's lots of options online on different websites. Believe it or not, Walmart actually has organic options at different times of the year. So it happens to be winter now, so it's not necessarily available, but I do recommend that route. So first step, we're going to dump about half the bag. We have about 8 quarts here. We're going to dump half the bag and just literally just fill them into these spaces, and then we'll proceed to putting the seeds in. So we want to get about half the bag. If it's an 8-quart bag, we do about 4 quarts. And a couple reasons for that. The first is there's a couple really time-saving techniques. I probably did put a little bit too much in here. But once we kind of get things to the point where they're generally spread out, a nice time-saving technique is to take this extra seed starter, if you have an extra one laying around, and once you kind of have the soil laid out, you can do about 72 impressions with a simple little press down like this, and you just kind of go around the whole area, press it down, and that'll compact it to a point where you have a nice bed for all of your seeds to go in. So we'll put about 3 seeds per cell, and then that'll give us, and 72, we're looking at approximately a couple hundred seeds we'll have started. And the reason for that is, once we get the couple hundred seeds down, some of them will germinate, some of them will not germinate. And so eventually you want to end up with about 1 seed per cell. Sometimes, to experiment, I've gone up to about 11 to 15 per cell for things like lettuce, and they've been totally fine. So the challenge is, if you don't get to it right away to transplanting, whenever they're ready to go, the roots start to get all tangled together. So that's why I think 3 is a really good route to go. If one of them lives, great. If all 3 live, you're probably going to be okay too. And so what we'll do is we'll put the seeds in, we'll put a little bit more soil on the top, and then we'll put the water in. Okay, so now we need to check back in on our water here. What I have here, I have the boiling water, and I have the about 4 cups, maybe 3 3/4 cups of reverse osmosis or distilled water. And I'm just going to heat up. I don't want to scorch the seeds, but I do want to get things to a point where they're above room temperature, which in this case is about 70 degrees or so. So if I can get things up to about the 80 degrees, then we're in a real good spot. All right, so we're just going to let that set because we're about ready for it. So now you go back to that handy dandy chart that you developed. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and start house 3. So I have 3 houses I'm going to start today. And what I'm able to do now is just go sequentially down my list, and just 1 row at a time. You see over here I have my rows. So we have about 12 rows in the greenhouse. So I'm just able to go sequentially down, pull out the seeds. They're already organized, and it will just make the process so much more streamlined. All right, so this is where I get to give a little shout out to the Sustainable Seed Company, which is where I buy almost all of my seeds. They are just amazing, and they have, many of them are organic certified seeds, and then those that aren't are going to kind of hail back to different varieties that predate all the funny stuff that's done with seeds these days. So anyway, what I like to do is, since I know how many I'm going to be working with, it's helpful to not over prepare and over create. So I'm able to just kind of get things ready in such a way I know that I have 1 row I'm working with this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have about 18 seeds I need total. So if I put them out on a piece of white paper, it's a lot easier to manage that. So I'll just go over here now, and I'll just put the 3 into this cell, and then once I have the 3 in place, 3 or 4, sometimes I go a little bit more. Once I have those in place, I can put the soil just right back over the top of those, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and just do about 3 to 4 per cell, since I already made those nice little indentations there. It's gonna be the perfect depth for whenever I need to put the soil right back on top of that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish out all 72 cells, and then we'll go through the next steps. All right, so what we'll do now that we have all of the seeds in, you're going to notice we have about 3 or so, sometimes ranging up to 7 to 10, depending on if it was an accident or not. We have all of those in place. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit more of the seed starting mix, and we're just going to put enough to kind of cover the tops of each of these seeds. And I find that kind of once I put some on here, I'll have to then cover it up a little bit more, just like so. And then, since we've already done the work of getting our water up to the temperature it needs to be, again, it just kind of helps when it's soaking into some of these seeds if it's just a little bit warmer to begin with. And then we also kill the problems that could really hurt our little seedlings, which primarily is going to be chlorine is what we're trying to get rid of there. So then we'll take, a lot of people say to go on the underside, but that's after you've done, in my opinion, that's after you've put the seeds in and it starts to germinate. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of systematically go over each of the cells. I start out with about 4 cups, and it just kind of depends on how things fall, but a lot of times I'll have to make a second pass and go up to 6 to 8 cups. The goal is you want the water to fill, and I'll kind of go in a couple different directions because I'm really, the whole goal here is you're trying to soak the seeds. And so I'll finish this out as much as possible, and I'll just say that down here you want the water to go up to at least about there. And it really, as this thing's going, you really shouldn't have it less than about that mark. It should kind of be between these two areas. To begin with, I might even soak it all the way up to there, and you'll know that by just kind of peeking your eyes in here, and it'll all drip into there, and eventually it'll fill that tray. So the big picture is, keep it there. The big picture is you're going to fill the water up to the spot we had indicated there, and then once you put this cover on, you want to sit it on like the top of a freezer or something that's going to have a little bit more heat, keeping it above that 70 degrees. And what that'll do is it'll just help generate the greenhouse effect, where you'll have condensation will start to rise to the top of this. And my take is, if you look from the top looking down, and if you don't see condensation building on this within a couple days, then you don't have enough water in there. And so let that be a guide. I mean, from the side you might not necessarily see it, but from the top you should see that condensation building on the top. And then once that starts to happen, it'll generate that greenhouse effect inside. And then once the plants start popping up, you want to take the lid back off again. So as soon as you see them start to pop up, you're done with the lid at that point, and then you put them under your grow lights, and then you'll have the grow lights for about until they get to be about that tall, or maybe up to about that tall, just 3 to 5 inches or so. Then you're ready to start hardening them off, where you take them outside a little bit at a time, and there's tons of other resources available for that. So this should conclude the starting of the seeds inside, and I hope that helps.